one that started Pause the Calls, which is an initiative to get people to not be so codependent upon the police and not always just pick up the phone every time there's a little small issue or a petty thing and call the cops for every little thing. So also we're starting a Black Lives Matter chapter in the city of Seaside. And we had a showing of the movie 13th. 13th was almost similar to explaining slavery by another name. 13th was based off of the 13th Amendment, and it was from slavery to criminal in one amendment. And the 13th also, it had a clause in it, slaves were free except if they were criminals. So that clause has now helped people find a loophole in how to start and get slaves again, how to get free labor, and helped a lot of very, very wealthy people get even more wealthy through the prisons for profit. And those are things that people need to know about, be aware of, and work against, and work to resist. And this is...
Hello everyone, my name is Gertrude Smith. I am the daughter of Miriam Smith, and we are a team when it comes to local activism in these areas, and we have been doing these things together. I am also a, politician as well, and my goal is intersectionality and liberation for all people, but especially Pan-African peoples. And that's how I found myself in this work.
I'm Audra Walton. I'm a longtime family friend of Miriam and her sweet daughter, Gertrude. I'm here in support of Pause the Calls. Hi, everybody. I'm a local yoga teacher. I'm up and coming, so look out for stuff.
So what we want to do is continue a conversation that we were having after the movie 13th. And the movie 13th, we showed it at the Monterey Peace and Justice Center last month. And the conversation was such a great conversation that we thought it would be nice to continue it and share it with an audience out there. And we're hoping that people get a better understanding of the movie. People go see it who has not already seen it, and the ones that have already seen it have a little bit better understanding of the movie. The more we talk about this movie, the more we share this movie, the more people will understand that it wasn't that a whole lot of criminals came into our country and we locked up a whole lot of criminals. It wasn't that. It was that a whole lot of people got an ideal off of a clause that was in the 13th Amendment, and they got an ideal that if they are in prison or criminals, so they created criminals out of people for small little petty stuff. And people go to jail for not showing up in court. People go to jail for not paying a fine. People are really going to jail for being poor. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, they are labeled now criminals and their lives are changed. Sometimes people go to jail for a long time because if they miss court too many times or don't pay a fine too many times, then they're in jail and they're labeled as criminals, which the movie does address the aspect of, the criminals, and then it addresses the aspect of undocumented people being deported. And they are also sometimes sent to jail and used as labor. So it really deals with free labor for rich people to get richer, and prisons for profit. It deals with that. So we want to make sure in our discussion that we cover some of those things, that how the rich are just getting richer off of free labor, and it's bigger than slavery was. People are getting rich off of free labor, and they don't even have to protect. They don't even have to protect their the prisoners. The harshness that happens to prisoners is horrible. How some prisons are across the country. Prisons really should just be shut down, and they should look at other ways and other methods. There's so many other methods to helping people rather than just throwing them in prison. But just so people know, a lot of people are in prison for petty really small things. That's why we created the initiative Pause the Cause, because Pause the Cause is to get people to not be so codependent on the police, but also to let people be aware that sometimes when the police get involved, things get escalated because they come to react. They don't always come to dissolve things. So things began to get escalated. Sometimes people lose their lives. Sometimes other things happen. People get arrested because the cop got angry, not always because the person did a crime. Also, people get arrested for small, tiny, petty stuff. And when they get arrested for small, tiny, petty stuff, like being homeless, that's real petty, right? They don't have a place to live, so they lay down in a park the wrong way, or they trespass on somebody's. That's really small and petty. And that's something you can talk to people about and try to redirect in other ways. But we, as Americans, tend to throw people in jail. And you throw them in jail long enough, and then they can't show up for court, or they can't show up and pay the fine that you give them. They're homeless. They don't even have money. And then they're back in jail, and they're labeled as criminals. So we have to be really careful and have our eyes open to know how this design really is, and not be a part of the design, not play a part of the design, because it's designed initially. When slavery started, it was when policing started, it was to catch slaves, and it progressively moved forward with when they were trying to break up peaceful protest. And it became a racial, it was embedded within the system of policing as a racial thing, and it's still a racial thing. So they keep building on top of this racial thing when it needs to just be dismantled and something else built again. Because when you build on top of something racist and it's contaminated at the bottom, it's hard to build on top and that contamination not come up through the core of it and not come up through and rot in the top. So we have to work at understanding why it was done, what's happening today, and what needs to happen tomorrow. I mean, want to say anything?
I think a good place to start would be with the money bail system. California actually, there's already been some sponsored legislation within the California state legislature to reform the money bail system, because someone's ability to get out of jail has really no bearing on like the nature of the offense that they committed in order to land them in jail in the first place. So what you have is poor people who have committed petty offenses, not even committed, but who have broken the law due to omission, as opposed to an intentional act to violate the law, but they end up sitting in jail because they can't afford to pay bail, whereas a wealthy person might have done something very dangerous and they're able to get out. So the system is really flawed, and it's really wrought with corruption, and it just makes for a lot of imbalance within our criminal injustice system. And that's just one area that is really important for people to work on. And I'm really glad that it's also on the hearts of our legislators. I believe Mark Stone, who is the assembly person for District 29, our elected assembly person, is one of the big supporters for that, which is really important, because currently in our jail systems, I believe there are one in every 12 African American men or men of Pan-African descent are incarcerated, as opposed to 1 in 81 white men, and there's 1 in 44 men who identify as Latinx or Latino who are incarcerated in Monterey County. So that's really important, is when you look at the disparities and how not only does income come into play and play a huge role, but also ethnic minority status does as well.
And then we also want to share that in the United States, well, in the world, the United States only have 5% of the population of the whole world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they house 25% of the prisons. And out of that, there's about 2 point so many million prisoners in the United States. Problem with that is 40 some odd percent of them are African American men, not to include the women. And this is showing that it's basically a racket for people to get money. The private prisons that they have out there, they have to be shut down because to meet the quotas and to keep people in jail, people get pulled over for a stoplight. And if they don't get killed, they get sent to jail sometimes because of some little petty stuff. And anything, I remember back years ago, you could get a ticket and if you're poor and you couldn't show up in court, you could go to court eventually and that ticket be sitting there and you take care of it. But nowadays, because of the racket and because of putting people in jail and they needed to make money and keep the money coming, and when you have the private prison, you have to guarantee the people that own these so many prisoners. So that means you have to go out there and violate so many people and so many families and so many homes and destroy families just to have the prisons filled. The prisons have to stay a certain percentage filled. And this is something that has been addressed in the movie 13th. And once people end up in jail, then they're disfranchised. Especially if they're African American. An African American can have a clean record, and if it's one of their counterparts, a white counterpart, and they go for the same job, the African American will not get it, and the white person will. So it's by design to keep holding back African American families and to keep not having them available to their own family, their own children, their own wives, and their own immediate families, brothers and sisters, mother and father. It makes them not available, and then it becomes generational. It just doesn't stop there with that one. It happens down through the next generation and down through the next generation. And then it makes people think that blacks are inherently bad. But it was by design that this even started, this even happened. It's by design that it's continuing, and the only thing that's going to stop it from continuing is that we do something about it, that we educate ourselves, that we understand history is repeating itself in another way. You're slaves, but now you're criminals and you're still slaves because you do free labor. You're sent out to do labor all over the country to different various companies, and they're making more money off of you than they did back in the day of slavery.
No. Okay. What I think I really like about the movie is this, how they highlighted the aspect of how easy it was to transform our African American community from freedmen into working free laborers inside of a prison system, and how quickly that slippery downgrade of Africans, the African American males' humanity, right? When they were allowed to be humans finally, how quickly that diminished into back into the idea that they're here for labor and that is their purpose. The way that the movie spotlights that shift in ideology from during I believe it's during the 70s, yes, where the movie starts.
It starts
talking
dating
about-
back to certain presidents
Right.
that I forget the.
Is it Nixon?
I think Nixon was the first one to declare war on drugs, and then Reagan sailed it with his administration.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote it with his administration. But Nixon was the first one.
Please.
That I think that's this movie is just really so very important for us to sit with. It's available on Netflix for those of you that don't know. I think there's a conversation that happens after it with
Oprah and the lady that
produced
the movie. Her name is, how to say her name is difficult. Her name
Ava DuVernay.
Ava DuVernay.
There you go. Nice. So yeah, I think that it would be very good for the American public to sit with this movie, sit in their skin, breathe with it, and understand that our history is such that it is not set up or designed. Our system is not set up or designed for people of color to get even a good footing in this country, to be able to get ahead as it stands. Many people of color in our communities, how do I say this without being too rude? This is my problem is that the subject is quite angering to me, as to many people. We have a problem. We have a huge problem in this idea that capitalism is the greatest thing that there is to, no other alternative to capitalism with respect to Margaret Thatcher and those Tina people. And our laborers that, this is such a good, strong subject that I'm getting tongue-tied in what I'm trying not to say because, anger.
It's a conversation about it.
It is.
You know, we're just continuing the conversation after the movie, and there's a lot of people that want to hear a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And that perk up what they've been thinking, or they're trying to understand.
That we still have a slavery system. This is what I'm saying. We have a slavery system. It's global. The one here is inside of our prison systems. We absolutely actively collect prisoners so that we can put them in our for-profit prison system so that they can work away in our sweatshops here at home. And, we are in a conversation now about our labor practices, our human rights practices, what we do with respect to our multinational corporations that are in other countries using labor and paying, if anything, pennies on the dollar, and then re-importing those things back to us. We're doing the same things in our prison systems. That's who we are actively collecting and putting into our prison systems so that they can labor for us and so that we can go to our local stores and buy our $5 and $6 shirts and put them on our bodies and walk around and be happy about that. This is sad. This is, I mean, when we look at our history, yes, for this country specifically, we see that was happening with our it's so hard to talk about this subject without putting myself into place of being an American and at the same time being of African American descent, knowing my people absolutely were slaves before they weren't. Mm-hmm. And then now I'm on this side where my son is walking around. Every time he hits the door, I have to have a conversation with him about how he should behave, how he should be responding to police if they happen to pull him over, because I'm scared that they just might decide that he is a threat and they're afraid of him and shoot him in the face. Or if they don't shoot him in the face, they'll find and figure out a way to charge him with something and take him and put him in jail so that he can be a part of this labor system, this for-profit prison system that's taking our people, our sons, our daughters, our husbands, our uncles, our people, and putting them into a slave trade, and then all of that money does not come back to our communities.
No.
Our leaders are gone. Our teachers are gone. Our babysitters, our people Now, we have to go outside of our communities into communities that may or may not accept us because of the way that we look, the way that we sound, the way that we walk, the way that we talk, and ask them for help because our people are missing.
Our people listen.
So,
You know,
You ain't doing
as you
nothing
were
but
saying,
preaching.
yeah, it's true. As you were saying, you know, to be arrested for something that they did not do, it reminded me of my son, who is about 30. I won't say exactly how old he is. He might tell how old I am. He's about 30,
No one
and,
cares.
and no one cares.
we're aging people.
So, well, he's one of 9 kids, and he's my second child, and she's my eighth
9.
child.
Oh, wait.
Eighth
Oh,
child.
I'm the
And I
8th.
have
Okay.
one more, and
Just
they're all
kidding.
grown. However,
They're all beautiful too.
they're blessed, I have to say. And this young man was 25 years old, and he was so kind, you know, was to let his mom use his car to go to church in another state, in Houston, Texas, to a convention. And I went to this convention, and everybody loved it so much. We wanted to stay a day later. Well, he had took vacation that week and stayed back here, and he worked in Salinas. And I went out of town, so he stayed back here, and he said, I have to have my car back by such and such time. And the night that I was supposed to have his car back, I was on my way. And he called me about 5 o'clock in the morning and said, Mom, where are you at? And I said, I'm in Fresno, California. I'm almost there. Because he had called me earlier, and I told him, I said, well, you're going to have to catch a ride with one of your coworkers and get a ride to my sister's house, who lives in Salinas. He had only been there one other time, and he worked across the way. And I said, don't walk, because I know he'll walk everywhere, and he doesn't like to bother anybody. And so he walks. And when he gets there, it's probably about 1 o'clock in the morning or so. But he doesn't catch a ride. And so he didn't remember exactly what house she lived in.
So I knocked on the
And
window.
he knocked on the door in front of her car. Wrong door. And, you know, here I'm a mother struggling to raise kids, and he's one of the grown ones and single, raising these kids. And this boy knocks on the wrong door. You know that's against the law in Salinas. So he goes and
Apparently.
sat down on a bench. And
Wait.
I'm going to try to tell the story because it's important that people know how, you know, why African-American parents are so scared. And so he sits down here on this bench, never been in trouble in his life, never had a problem, not even in school. And he's 25 years old, he made it to that. And when he looks up, the cops are all over him. You know, it's 1:30 in the morning. He's not doing anything. He just knocked on the wrong door. They didn't answer, so he says he's just waiting for her to come to the door or something. He's not going to bother her, you know, because he's asleep. And so he sits on the bench because there's a bench outside the apartment area. And the cops come, and it's freezing. I have his coat in the car. I have his ID in the car. And thank God for the new law in 2013 that happened, of course, after this incident, where you don't have to have ID when you're walking in the state of California. But I had everything on me in the car because this is how he rolls, everything in the car so he can remember it and he can keep up with it. And so anyway, his driver's license was in the car, his coat was in the car, and he went to work that day thinking I'm going to get there in time enough to pick him up from work, and I was 6 or 7 hours behind. Nevertheless, sitting on this bench, and as he's sitting on this bench, they roll up on him, and he's never, ever dealt with a cop before in his whole entire life. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. At 14, and I'll tell what happened with that. But they ask him every question, and you know he answers the question, and he's sitting there freezing, his hands in his pocket. And they ask him to take his hands in the pocket, and he said he's cold. To jump him. Never heard that boy cry. It broke me down. He was beat up and bruised up real bad by cops for just being black. That's all I can say. and I'll keep saying that because that's all I believe. And he was beat up so bad, and I took him to the hospital and everything. But he's one of those humble kind of kids. You know, humble, obedient. He's obedient to me, obedient to everything. You know, and so he got caught up in that particular system. You know, where he works every day, and the public defender, you know, he gets arrested and gets discharged, and it's like something that should be thrown out to me. Now I'm crying when I pick up my son though, and take him to the hospital, and I'm like, but it's like, I'm a man. It's okay, Mom. It's okay. And he told me everything he said. Well, if he said it, I never caught him in a lie in his life. So if he said it, now I got some kids, okay? Because that other boy that came after him, I caught him in several lies. And he done been a police officer, and he's in the Marines right now. But I done caught him in several lies. So, you know, I got some kids that'll lie out of the 9. But this one was not a liar. So if he said it, if he said he did it, you could bank on that. You could walk it to the bank, ride it to the bank, and you could bank on the bank. So I took him, I said, you're going to fight this, and we're going to, go further, and we're going to, oh, no, Mom. He says, I'm good. And he's humble, too humble. And so we get back and forth to court. And the lawyers want to talk to him by himself all the time. I said, no, he's never been to court before. I'm gonna be right there. Oh, Mom, that's good. It's okay, Mom, And I'm like, no, you're not going to take a plea deal. All they ever do, we might as well stop paying public defenders in this county because they ain't real. All they ever do is talk these black kids into pleading.
Well, anybody.
You should look at his record, see he's never been in trouble, pull his school record, see he's never had a problem, and then go from there. But they don't care. It's a system that's designed to trap our black people. And all they do is trap them. And they talked this boy into plea, and I said, no. He said, the attorney said, I'm not talking to you. You're not him. I'm talking to him. They actually pay these public defenders to talk innocent kids into pleading. So 97% of our kids that are in prison that go to jail never go to court. They plea bargain out of it. That's where the criminal stuff comes from. That's where they make their money from. That's what happens. It's nothing. With these kids in jail, we done claimed and labeled all these black kids, and then they get out and they can't get a job. They get out and they can't. But anyway, he went to jail. He came out of jail and went through all that, and I could not talk that boy into not pleading for something that he did not do. He did not understand the system because the system was against him from the beginning. The public defenders were against him. This is your best thing. This is your best thing to do. I said, don't listen to that. That's not the best thing to do. You didn't do anything. You never had a record. We'll go on. I don't want you to spend no money, Mom. I said, I don't care what you want. I will borrow the money. I'll do it. We're going to get you out of this. He didn't want me to spend money, and he had missed, I would say, 20 days of work going back and forth to court, and he couldn't keep missing work. And the attorney, this is the attorney's hustle. The public defender said, you can change it in a year. You have a year to change it. He said, Mom, I can change it. I can't keep missing work. And I don't want you to spend no money to get an attorney. So now, how does that make a mother feel knowing that she's raising pretty okay kids? I mean, so much that, she's my 8th child. She just ran for mayor of Seaside last year. They all stay out of trouble. Even him, after that, he stayed out of trouble. Even every one of my kids stay out of trouble. These are kids I raised. And they get in trouble like that with the law? They weren't in trouble. That's how it's set up. It's in the system. So when I say watch that movie 13th, when I say people aren't lying, they're not lying. They're not lying. Well, if he didn't already have a job, and if he didn't have a praying mom that's always praying for him, then no telling where he would end up with him pleading to resisting the arrest. And he told me how they jumped on him and beat him up. He told me how they did it. But nobody wants to believe those black kids, They ain't worth nothing anyways, whatever. But when he was 14, I was riding bikes home from my mother's house, and when I left my mom and dad's house, I was driving in my truck, and they were riding bikes. They wanted to take the bikes out of my truck, and it was after curfew. It was after 10 o'clock at night, and so they're riding down the hill to my house from my mom's, and And
Which was around
somebody stopped me coming down the hill because I was normally riding right behind them. And got down the hill, and I said, where are my kids at? They should be right here. And looked over in the corner, and the cops had my son and was putting him inside, 13 years old. He was 13, not 14 yet. Putting him inside the police car. And I went and snatched my son out that police car and said, what are you doing? He's a minor. You can talk to me about it. What are you doing with my son? I knew he hadn't did nothing. I know my kids, right? And the cop said, ma'am, you better get out the way. Da, da, da. I said, I'm not moving. I said, this is my son. He's 13 years old. Well, he just told me he was 14. Now, I didn't believe the cop. And my son told me he didn't say that. But I'm just saying, you know, you put my son in the back car. It's after curfew. That is no reason to arrest a kid. But that's what they do to our kids. That is no reason to throw my kid in the back of a police car and throw his bike somewhere. You know, because he's after curfew. So I'm like, I was just blessed that cop didn't do nothing to me because I didn't know no better. I'm snatching my son out this car because I know what kind of kids I'm raising. But you know what? That could have been me dead today. You know, it could have been me arrested and taken away from my kids. They do it. They don't care. They do it. So that's why it's so important to pause the calls and stop giving so much power to the police. The more power we give to them, the less accountability they become, and the less they feel like they should have to answer to the community and to the citizens. When I think they're community members just like us, and they're just doing a little extra jobs that's supposed to be to protect and serve. But I don't feel protected with police. And I never feel that I got proper service with police. Now, don't get me wrong, in my older age, I have, people that I know very well that are police. And, like I say, my son was one. Why did you ever want to become a police? But, and then he went into Marines. That was the best thing. That was the best thing he could do. But, my neighbor was retired chief of police, and, we couldn't help but be friends because we were true neighbors. His kids helped with my kids, and they were older than my kids. And it was just so, I've had friends and people, I even dated a cop. But, I'm going to tell you, I'm not for all this stuff that go down with the cops. I ain't for it. I had a one time that I called the cops when I was about 25 years ago, and I was beat up really, really bad. And called the cops, and she said it wasn't that bad, but I was beat up. And I called the cops, and the cop said, if I arrest him, I'm going to arrest you. Now, I'm 6 months pregnant. I done just got beat up by a man, but he want to arrest us both because we were both black. That's the only thing I can get out of that, even to this day, that we was both black. And when I dated that cop, he told me all the little stuff to go on, how they do stuff and how they. So, we really need to reconsider how we use the system, because the system is learning to work against people of color, black and brown people. And right now, the system is at the point that, back up just a second and say, I end up in the hospital from being beat up. I end up with my back thrown out. I end up in a lot of situations. And then come back up to this time right now. I just want to share that was not just a little petsy beat up. And then I had to go in hiding. Anyway, back to today is now they want to criminalize undocumented immigrants. And they'll become criminals just like all of us, just for being undocumented. That's why we have to pause the calls for the little petty, tiny stuff that they will take people in for. And right now, if they criminalize undocumented immigrants, they go in Monterey County Jail. Our sheriff has ICE office. They have the ICE officer right there in the jail. So if they go to jail for a tiny, petty thing, now our number 45, don't want to say his name, but y'all know it starts with a T. He's going to make sure everybody is criminalized. Everybody's criminalized, and everybody that's undocumented, just for showing up to the jail, you going. So we can't just allow that to continue. We can't. It's perpetuating itself. It's history repeating itself, and it's targeting other brown people, other people of color. And so I don't want to just take up all the time. But
You already did.
Oh. Go ahead. You got that?
I'm just going to sound like a nerd and give you a few more statistics. So, you know, there are long-term detrimental effects to coming into contact with the criminal injustice system, such as in the case of the state of Alabama, disenfranchisement specifically. 30% of black men in Alabama have permanently lost their right to vote due to felony disenfranchisement. Now, disenfranchisement is, in essence, on the road to stripping someone of their citizenship and of their personhood, of their humanity. And when you do that, that really is problematic. And we really need to move away from the idea that felony disenfranchisement is necessary, because it absolutely is not. You should not ever lose your right to vote. You should be able to vote behind bars, not just in jails, but in prisons as well. And, while we still have them, since my mom wants to get rid of them. And then, so I don't even understand why that's a thing. Also, and that's just one of the things. It's really hard to find a job when you get out, like was mentioned earlier, when you get out of prison. It's really, and that's why ban the box legislation is so important, is making it where employers don't need to ask that question, have you been convicted of whatever kind of offense? And I think that's something that's worth doing. And these are all different things. And like I mentioned earlier when we first were starting the discussion, I mentioned, bail and how that is marginalized, how that negatively impacts marginalized groups of people. And also now I'm mentioning disenfranchisement in other ways. And then also the likelihood of imprisonment for black men is 1/3. Like 1 in 3 black men are likely to be criminalized to the point of imprisonment, or at the very least, having a felony or some other conviction on their record. It's 1 in 3, whereas white men, juxtaposed to that, is 1 in 17. That's like a huge difference. And not to mention, this system is meant primarily for, punitive measures, for retributive measures for men. I can't even imagine what it's like for femmes and for women and for people who go into the prison system who may be pregnant while they're there, and they're not even in conditions that are suitable to their well-being, because they're women as well, So whether they're cisgendered or transgendered women, they have different set of circumstances that are facing them that are infinitely more problematic, I would say. And then there's also not as much research in terms of what needs to be done specifically, to benefit female inmates, or not inmates, but female incarcerated persons. So I had a few other important things that I wanted to say. None of them are written here, and I forgot. And I'm just upset, so I can't remember anyways. Sorry, I kind of just fell flat, but that was exhausting to think about.
I understand. Yeah, totally exhausting. It just, with respect to pause the calls, I understand we don't really have, this is an informative information. Hi, everybody, for giving information. I think some of that is, with respect to you, I turn to you for leadership, Miriam. I think what you're doing is great, getting people together so that we can talk and start a conversation from the grassroots level, allowing us to meet with our neighbors that might not be inside of our same smaller community, yes, with respect to concentric circles. So I think when I was at your screening of the 13th the other week, I met a German gentleman that lives in Santa Cruz now, and we had the greatest conversation about politics and public policy and being an African American or of African American descent in this country as compared to in Germany. It's just a wonderful way for us to, I think, begin to A, talk about the problems that we're facing, and then B, think tank, if you will, even just on a local small level, about moving us from this situation that we're in into something better. I wanted to ask a little bit about you work at the Peace and Justice Center, how people can get a hold of you. What's the best way to get involved? Are you going to have another screening of the 13th, the movie? What's our next? How do we heal our community from here?
We keep the conversation going. That's one thing, and we also keep the conversation going about racism, because the ideal is to dismantle racism. And thanks for my friends that work with what is it, Whites for Racial Whites for Racial Equity, JT and Sue work excellent with that, with teaching other white people how to dismantle racism. And really what it's all about. Some people just barely, they'll just touch the surface in their beliefs, so they don't want to talk, they don't want to have the conversation. So they don't want to talk about it. And
It's a tough one.
so they don't know, and they talk from a level of grazing the surface, and they will not go in depth. But the more people are talking about it, the more the conversation can go on. So it becomes a normal thing to understand how to dismantle it, so that when it's dismantled, it's easy to defuse when it starts rising up, and people then not only are able to defuse it when it starts rising up, but they then are able to identify what causes the hate, how it starts with bitterness and it moves forward. They're able to identify what causes the problems that we have that helps socially isolate communities and destroy neighborhoods. And so what we do is we have several groups, and that group, our groups are housed under NOLAC of culture and community resources. And under that, we have something called Community for Unity. And it's an initiative to get the community members working together in peace, love, harmony, and just get them to respect and honor each other and others, and just kind of spread this powerful love that will help affect, change in our community. And as a result of that, we work on the immigration and undocumented stuff in that Community for Unity. We work under Pause the Cause, comes up under that. We brought in the Black Lives Matter Seaside to make that a chapter. And we work under a couple of initiatives just to try to get the community members working together. Right now, one thing we're starting is training people to know their rights. So everybody should know their rights so that we can teach the undocumented people their rights. And the undocumented people would be able to then know that if they're in this country, they have a right to remain silent. Anything they say and do can and will be used against them, so that they don't necessarily have to tell anybody that they weren't born in this country. They don't have to tell anybody that they're not a citizen. They don't have to tell anybody any information about them. Just keep their mouths shut. And so we have this little red card. I think I brought one with me that we're working on spreading all across our county and stuff. And that's a part of our group. And then I'll tell you when we meet. But this is for undocumented people to be able to show and say, my lawyer said for me not to talk, and give their name or whatever, but my lawyer said not to talk. And so we work with that through the Community for Unity and basically Pause the Cause, because it's necessary for people to protect themselves now, and communities to work together within communities. And we had our first Pause the Cause a couple of years ago. We had that, and when that came out, we had somebody talk to us that had told us about what they were doing up in Oakland, and they have communities of people coming together, doctors, nurses, all kinds of paramedics coming together, because a lot of times when cops show up, they don't take the people right away to the hospital, and these people will take them on to the hospital and do things with the people, so that the people in the communities are protecting each other. So right now we're working on sanctuary communities and Community for Unity, and we meet on second Wednesday nights of the month and on fourth Wednesday nights of the month, and we meet from 7 to 9. We also have a Liberating by Law class that we meet, and we'll meet tonight from 6 to 9, and it's a free class. It's for people interested in learning the law, or interested in getting ready to go to law school, and interested in knowing their rights. And it's informational. Someone that used to be a lawyer teaches it, another doctor, and we have other lawyers that were willing to come in and teach and help. This is primarily what you call popular education, so it's an unofficial law class that we have, but we want to build it up, and we want it to become something that people can really use for information on cases, and learn how to study and look up cases, and learn. That's what he's doing with us, is he's having us study and look up cases and stuff. And so I'm also going to add a clause to that tonight, as with our undocumented immigrants, so that I got paperwork from a training I went to last Saturday from the immigration law lawyer, and I want to add some information to that, so that we'll take an hour aside and just work on immigration stuff, and we can inform our community, because we not only I'm leading the effort for sanctuary cities in Monterey County, and in doing that, I took the lead in Seaside. To a level that it was unexpected myself. We had over 600 people show up last week on Thursday night at the Seaside City Council for the sanctuary cities, and that was really awesome. So we're doing that, and we're meeting also on fourth Saturdays for liberating by law. We meet on fourth Sundays. I meant to say fourth Sundays, and that fourth Sunday will be at 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, so that we can be able to reach our community and do as much as we possibly can to spread, love, happiness, peace all through this crazy time. It's a really crazy time. Number 45 ain't joking. He's coming out hitting us with every kind of bullet, every kind of every kind of thing that he possibly can. And we as a community have to become a sanctuary community and be prepared to help people, because it's not no joke. This stuff is real. And all the hate has came out of the shadows, came out of the woodworks, all the hate, all the bitterness, all the racism. It's got permission now to rise. And so we have to help at the local level, and we have to help at the grassroots level to shut it down. We have to just shut it down. We can run things from a local level. If you're going to be up high and you're going to be unconstitutional and you're going to be unfair and you're going to be racist, and it's going to be okay for a majority of people in the country, then the people that have to keep themselves safe cannot fall up under that kind of Nazi kind of leadership. So.
Where is the meeting?
Oh, Monterey Peace and Justice, 1364 Fremont. Yeah, in Seaside, California. So we have our meetings there.
Facebook.
And we have a Community for Unity Facebook page. We also have a Pause the Cause page. And we also have a no lack of community and culture resources page. And that's where everything falls up under, because the main thing is I'm a restorative justice advocate and a disabled person advocate and homeless advocate. And so a lot of our stuff falls up under trying to create no lack So trying to reduce harm in the community, no lack of resources and no lack of being able to take care of yourself and keep yourself safe from having to go to jail for things. Hopefully we'll be able to offer certain services, and direct people to services that will keep them out of jail. So we want to reduce the harm and go into and try to help people find jobs. And we're working on some stuff right now where I do have several people that are placing people on jobs all over the county, and help people find jobs and help people find resources that they need to reduce the harm. So rather, if a kid steals in the store around in our community, we want to be able to redirect it, do a diversion program, reduce the harm, stop sending all these kids to jail. We want to stop the school to prison pipeline, because most of the black kids in Monterey County, Monterey Unified School District, are going to jail. In Monterey County, it's the black and the browns, but black and browns in both, but most of the black kids. So we've reduced the numbers down by, I think, to 38% the last I noticed in the Monterey Unified School District, but we're only 6% of the district. So for us to reduce the numbers down, and majority was black kids going. So that has to stop. I mean, people have ignored it because they inherently think blacks are bad. They inherently think that can't any good come out of this city? Can't any good come? Even though more crime is done in Monterey than it is Seaside, they think that no good can come out of Seaside.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I really did enjoy about the movie, was that it did highlight how our society has painted African American black people as super predators, as this horrible, mean, nasty group of people that are only here to seriously harm the Americans from how great they could possibly be if it weren't for us sitting around messing it up. So when it comes down to it, I think it's easier for society to dismiss us when society's leaders have already told them that we're subhuman and we don't deserve to be treated with the same respect as anyone else that as someone of the Northwestern European descent, because everybody outside of that is trash anyway, to the degree of how well they assimilate and become the other. I think there's a lot that we really do need to think about with respect to our history, where we came from, how we got here economically, socially, politically, and we need to keep talking about it, and we need to keep having these uncomfortable conversations where our history is exposed, and we talk about why we are in the moments that we're in, why it's so easy for us to transition from an Obama presidency where, crazy crap was going on outside of our borders, but not necessarily right here where we were willing to talk about it. Now it's happening inside of now we're willing to talk about what's happening inside of our borders because we've got this racist president and all of his racist people that are now emboldened to be outwardly racist and proud and loud about it. It's the same America. For me, okay, I'm going to talk personally. For me, this is the same America that we had yesterday and the day before and the day before. It's a little bit worse because now our police officers have armored vehicles to come out and drive on our streets when it comes to that we're angry because they keep shooting us in the face. So we need to talk about it. We need for those that are listening, that are paying attention, that are sharing, that are involved. We need more people to sit down, have a screening in your house, okay, with your friends. Call them over, sit them down, have an agenda or a platform or something that you're going to follow so that you can discuss and talk about this movie and what it means to our society as a whole, and then our society with respect to we are global humanity. Okay.
Have the screening in your churches.
Yes.
Have the screening in your groups,
in your
community
yoga center.
Groups.
Ooh.
Identify that there is a problem and don't hide from the problem.
Yeah. And join Community for Unity.
Yeah, join
Pause
us.
the call.
Community for Unity, pause the call, and then build your own team up somewhere, and build it up so much that we're building from that Community for Unity, and we're building all over the community, and we're working together on the causes to dismantle racism, to get racial justice going, and to move forward with helping with our neighbors and our friends and people that we care about, and to respect our values, and to help protect the undocumented immigrants that were our friends yesterday and they're still our friends today, that are our neighbors that were there yesterday, and now all of a sudden 45 steps in, he spits out some hate, but they're still there today, and they're scared, and they're not sending their children to schools, and they're not able to feed their kids because they don't want to get on aid when they need aid and get food stamps, and they're not getting health care, they're not getting to the doctor, some of them aren't leaving their houses and everything. They're still our neighbors. They're still our neighbors.
And family.
And they're our families, and they're our friends, and we have to be able to come together as a community and have a sanctuary community in every community there is in the United States. Let's start here in Seaside, and let's empower our Monterey County.
All right.
That's good.
I don't know. I give you goofy.
Do you guys have any questions, or?
We wandered in.
Okay.
We came in for coffee, and then they're like, "Hey, they're doing a thing."
Oh, good.
Great, great for you to share. I actually work at.
Uh-oh, what's up?
A little technical difficulty there, no big deal. That looked at a very empty screen, or is something really exciting is happening?
No, I work at Netflix, and so they had in February a showing of 13.
Oh, wow, you work in that fest.
Yeah.
Woo!
It is a really good documentary.
It is.
It's
Very well done.
yeah. And being someone who's in tech, I'm just trying to think, how do I take like what's this next action? Like I'm all right. You got me juice. What's this action that I can take, or what action can I build to then bring other people in? Because me as an individual, I don't really have that much individual power.
But together we do.
If I can build tools, that say, all right, now there's 20,000 of us, and you can see that all 20,000 of us, let's all call our senators together. Let's
Yes.
all email our senators together. Let's get this bill passed. Let's try and eliminate these things, because ultimately it will serve us, and because we're all scattered and because we're all disconnected, we're not able to make any sort of concerted effort. So
Right.
just trying to think.
So what is happening here is it's the thing that we need to understand is, in order for 45 to get in place where he's at, I call him 45 and I say that he's illegal. He's not legally there. Now, we have no illegals in this country, okay? They might not have papers, they may not be documented, but we have no illegals in this country but one. And that's number 45.
Oh, hi.
So now, in order to say that, in order to get where he may have gotten this group of people around him, they had tea parties and they did grassroots local things. We have to locally work together in a grassroots movement and let it spread. And it spreads from the bottom to the top to the senators. So we don't just send senators information and inspect an answer, because we can't even trust them to give us an answer to follow our lead. We have to create a lead for them to follow. We have to create a lead for them, if they follow our lead, that they will bounce on it and fall on it, and we'll lift them up. You see what I'm saying? And if we're not down there at the bottom, grassroots, locally, building this movement, we're not going to be able to lift up our senators when they do what we ask them to do. So we have to powerfully, as people, move from the bottom up. And I know people are talking about the indivisible stuff, and let's write letters and send them to our senators. Yeah, that's good and dandy. Let's do protests. Yeah, I'm all for that, do that. But I'm also for the grassroots movement. Okay, me knocking on doors, me getting in the streets in Seaside, me getting all to the other people, showing them that I care, brought 600 people to a place that probably only fits 200 in Seaside. You see what I'm saying? Just because we have to do it from the grassroots level. We have to locally get these people and empower them and everything, and then move forward. And a lot of people have that great ideal, oh, well, let's do this. So, Indivisible was dead for a while. And what they do is they write letters to the senators and things like that, to our local representatives. And we have 3 of them here in Monterey County area and Santa Cruz County. But they write these letters to them and everything, and they go lobby their offices and everything. All that's real good. But if they don't see anybody, if nothing's happening, they don't have nothing to bounce off of. It's like that trampoline. Now they put these nets around it, and you could jump high, right? But if you see that net, you may jump a little higher. You may go the distance. They can't go the distance without us building a net. We have to have a place for them to fall. So the thing about it is, because when they fall, guess what happens when you got that trampoline? You bounce back up, right? And you bounce into place, and you can start jumping again. But if you fall without any foundation, there ain't no jumping, ain't no bouncing up. So what we're doing as a Community for Unity is building up the community, a foundation of people, and building them up to the point where they're empowered. And when they go to their senator, they're not going to the senators. I asked for 100 deep. I end up with 600 deep. They're not going to their senators with 2 or 3 of people, 50 people, 40 people. We go in 100 deep. Everywhere I go, I'm saying when we go to each city for a sanctuary city, we're going 100 deep. We're asking 100 people to go. We need 100 voices. We're not playing. He's not playing. So let's not play. Let's just get the job done. And that's where we start. We start locally doing like they did, because you think they like him? They're in there working in the White House with that man. They don't even like him. But they working with him, right? So we have to learn how to work together as individuals. Whether we like what that person is doing or not, we're looking for a certain result. And that result is whatever it's going to take, we keep working to work against and be resistant toward the stuff that destroys and damages and messes with our values. We work against that, right? And we build teams of people that'll work for what we want to see happen. And then as we do that and we continue to move forward, then we have a whole lot more power, because we have the power of the people. The power of the people is the thing that's going to... Listen, the revolution will not be televised. The power of the people is the thing that we need. And you ain't going to be able to tell when that happens. I have no idea 600 people would show up now. I had an idea over 200 might show up or so. So the revolution will not be televised. It's not like these people are telling you you're going to know. It's going to happen in the moment of our work. At the time, as we're working and as we're doing the thing, but we have to build that solid. Did I make any sense there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, she's suggesting, I'm just going to piggyback, if you will.
Go ahead, honey.
On this, and I'll be really quick, because I've been asking around for a couple of years. I recently finished my degree, so I went back. I took some business classes, took some politics classes. In my business classes, a very new, different way of me being on the planet in an accounting class with all these numbers. Ooh, they were crazy. I asked my instructor, because at the time, and I'm still getting a lot of pressure to buy a cell phone, okay? And I don't want anything to do with a cell phone until I know that my babies in the Congo aren't dying so I can have my cell phone. Y'all can look into that. I'm trying to keep it brief. When I asked my instructor, not just one, a couple of different instructors, how do we have these practices so deeply embedded in our system that if I want a cell phone, absolutely have to own a slave to get it? What is that? I'm from slaves. I can't stand that. You know what he said to me? The onus is on the consumer. It's always on us. That's the point. Mm-hmm. We are the consumer, and the only thing backing the dollar, the U.S. dollar, is our faith in it. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of faith in it. We're going to keep putting our faith in it. I'm pretty sure of it. Yes? But we as the consumer have the power of our faith in our dollar and where we're going to put it. Political. So the other day, I was with, should I even say his name? I was at a Green Party event, and I asked a question from the gentleman that was doing his presentation. And I said, okay, so I've listened to everything that you had to say, and I'm looking at, the Democratic Party with respect to this split,
okay, between the progressives and the corporate Democrats. He didn't like the language that I used, so he relabeled corporate Democrats as moderate, okay? And he, again, so his answer to my long question about, like, how do I elect a Democrat who I'm afraid is going to continue bombing black and brown nations, or some of these other things that they're doing. And he said, well, they listen to their constituents. And once again, the onus was back on the constituents, okay, or back on us, okay? So these people are responsible. They are representative of us and our voices. Like she said, when we change our voices, when we show up with our voices, not just with a letter that we email that they can delete if they want to, we're a little more powerful, right? And the onus is on us. And they are from us, by us. We put them there and we take them out. That's there.
And just before you say something, I just want to say really quick and piggyback on that also.
Sorry.
Salinas had ruled against sanctuary cities 3-4. And when they ruled against sanctuary cities 3-4, they not only got letters, they got a power of almost 300 people going in there this past Tuesday on the 7th at 4 o'clock to speak for public comments to ask them to change that. And right now, they're filing a lawsuit against the number 45 for sanctuary cities. And we want them to make a statement that they are a sanctuary city as well. But I just wanted to say, people's power change things, but not just us protesting. We did protests after that. We did letters after that. We talked to people on the phones after that. And then we showed up. Okay, more of us showed up than was there before. Every single time they had that people came to talk about it, it was more people every time at it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No worries. I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of something he said. We both come from Michigan, and being from Michigan, coming here, a lot of family and friends that we grew up with, they think of California as like radical and crazy and out there, and they're very conservative. And the generation, our parents' generation and above, they watch the news and they pay attention to those things. But my generation, they pay attention to the internet. And so when you have stories of personal stories, like about your son, and those are the things that really reach us, because you can relate to a personal story, whereas when you're seeing a lot of news outlets just pumping stuff out all the time, it's hard to filter. It's hard to go through that. And I think a lot of people back home, they have a hard time hearing the personal stories through just the media or the protests. And piggybacking off of that idea where you get a large amount of people online to come together, even through online, a lot of change comes through that.
Yes.
You know, not just in person, but online, because online is so big now. People make change, they spread their voice, they spread their opinions. Online, you also get heard. It's a huge presence. And especially for our generation, that's the biggest way to spread your story and personal experience. And honestly, the two things I respond to the most really are personal stories and statistics.
Wow.
Because to me, you can't fight statistics. They're just facts. They're flat out facts. And personal stories are personal. It's your life. It's how you live. It's what you raising your child. It's what you've experienced from others. Nobody can tell you your personal experience is wrong. You can have a different opinion, but nobody can tell you if your feeling is wrong or whatever. And that's powerful.
I believe
Those
it.
are things that cannot be argued against.
I agree.
just keep going with that.
Well, you know, it's really weird that you said that, because somebody suggested make sure that people tell testimonies, and I'm like, I'm scared if they go up there and they're undocumented, they might get taken away. And they said no, personal stories, the people need to hear their story, their testimony. And so I said, well, I need you guys to help me, because I don't speak Spanish. A little tiny, I need you to help me. I need them to know that I want personal stories, testimonies. We need to move the city council people and the mayor. We need to move them in our direction, and so that they will agree to a sanctuary city in Seaside. And I tell you, she said, if you get the pieces of paper together for me, then I'll help you get the people, and I'll get them out there. And I made it a promise to get paper. They just needed something to guide them. So we had 4 points on there that they talk about, and I had over 300 papers. I didn't have enough for everybody, and it became a commodity bond. They was after that paper, and they waited until I got there. They had probably been there half an hour before me. The study session started at 5:30, but we planned to be there at 7 o'clock. So I planned to be there at 6:30, and people were piling up. When we got there was a jumping house. They had seen on the internet that people were going to show up, and they had free childcare in the back. But these people were sitting there waiting on these few instructions that I had on this piece of paper. So you're so right. And they got up there and they told their personal testimonies, and they moved the city council in Seaside to the point that I feel like when we went back to Salinas, city council in Salinas was more cooperative from what they got and the news that they heard from Seaside. So
People not everybody can relate to one another, and it's when we find those personal connections that really bring us together, things that people can relate to. And personal stories are things that people aren't hearing through the news all the time. You're hearing a lot of different things of protests and fighting and all this other stuff, which makes people put a wall up.
that's really,
Honestly, it's the personal stories that brings the wall down into communication.
oh, that's
And that's
beautiful.
what I want to hear more. When you talk
That's
about
beautiful.
undocumented people, in conservative communities, they're just so afraid that they're going to take their jobs, that they're just coming
Yes.
in to take jobs. They're not understanding either what they're running from or what they're running to.
Yes, yes.
Insulated.
Yes.
I grew up in a white bubble. I mean, it's like 98% white folks all around, and then I'm going to work and they're white. So it's just, I'm just in a bubble, so it's like I don't get that same impact. And
Which is not here.
Right.
We're talking about being raised.
yeah,
you know?
no, so it's coming to California and getting all this perspective, and then trying to be like, how can I share that? And how can I
Help with it.
reach out to my friends and family, and how can I bring some of this insight, this growth, and kind of share it, and how can I leverage a lot of what I've learned and pass that on, so
That's beautiful.
community.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I'm so glad that you all stepped in here, and I want Abigail to talk about what they were talking about. Annabelle, Lord have mercy. Talk about what they were talking about on Wednesday night in our meeting, because that they are talking about putting what you're talking about. What's your name? Samantha, what you're talking about, they're talking about putting that together for our Community for Unity group. You want to talk about that, what you and Howard were talking about?
Oh, sure. So we,
The mic, you can.
there you go. I'm in the scene now. One of the things that we want to be producing here on Resistance TV coming up soon is exactly what you're talking about, and just getting, we want a battery of people who are willing to share their stories of the impact of the recent immigration laws have had on their lives. We're making accommodations for people to share those stories anonymously if they want, with like some sort of block on their face or their voice, so that, it's, I think the one quote that we were discussing at the meeting was, that I think is a deep truism of humanity is you can't hate somebody whose story you know.
Yes.
It's just, but our society is set up to keep us from knowing each other's stories intentionally, very intentionally, and so I think you're so right that that's the perfect way to break down those barriers, is to just be able to, look into someone else's eyes, even if metaphorically, even if it's a blurred face eye, and hear what they're going through and what they're struggling with. And so, yeah, we're hoping to put out a call to the community if anybody has a story that they would like to share, if they've been impacted personally by 45's immigration. Can I curse on the show? I actually didn't that. Call Shade Street Studios, 831-655-2010, and we'd love to amplify your voice and let people know what you're going through, so that we can make it even more urgent, the work that we're doing. So thank you for the question, Miriam. And in case you guys have any more comments. All right.
Wait, I wanted to know what part of Michigan.
Mid-Michigan,
Mid-Michigan?
The Lansing area?
Oh,
A little
Nice.
bit north of Lansing, but yeah.
south of Lansing.
I have family in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Lansing and Romulus.
oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Cool.
Yay. Well, thank you guys so much for doing this incredible discussion. We so appreciate it. Tune in to Resistance TV every Friday at 2, everyone, and these wonderful panelists or others will be back for another episode the first Friday of next month for Resistance TV. So make sure you tune in then. That will be, I believe, April 6th.
April
If I'm not
6th.
mistaken. So yes, thank you guys again so much.
All right. All right. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. Okay. Wow.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. Let that